welcome to the world of mystery and horror. Have you ever heard of haunted houses? Places that hide secrets better left undiscovered? Today, we take you on a journey into one of the most terrifying and thrilling stories, The Grey Child. A mysterious house, whispers in the dark, and secrets that should never be revealed. But what if some secrets refuse to stay buried? Find a quiet place, turn off the lights, and get ready for a story that will make your heart race with fear. And don't forget, if you enjoy the story, hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss more spine-chilling tales. Now, let's begin. The house had never truly been Michael's home. Its oppressive silence and shadowy corners gnawed at him, whispering secrets he dared not uncover. Tonight, that silence felt alive, thrumming with something unspoken. He sat in the living room, his phone glowing dimly in his hands, its screen his only refuge. The wind outside howled softly, its rhythm broken by the occasional creak of the house's old bones. Michael tried to convince himself, it's just the wind, just the house. Then came the knock, a soft, deliberate sound from upstairs. Michael's body tensed, his eyes shot to the ceiling. The sound wasn't a rattle or groan of wood. It was precise. It came again, this time accompanied by a faint giggle. It was a child's laugh. Michael's throat tightened as he rose from the couch. His legs felt like lead as he climbed the stairs, the wooden steps moaning under his weight. Reaching the landing, he gripped the railing, his knuckles white. The hallway stretched out before him, shrouded in darkness. At the far end, the guest room door, always kept shut, was slightly ajar. Cold air seeped through the gap, carrying with it the damp, earthy scent of rot. Taking a shaky breath, Michael stepped forward. "Hello?" His voice wavered, the words swallowed by the oppressive stillness. There was no response. He pushed the door open wider. The room was barren except for the worn mattress in the corner and a single wooden chair facing the window. Moonlight filtered through the glass, casting pale streaks across the walls. That's when he saw it. In the corner of the room, crouched low, was the child. It couldn't have been older than 6, but something about it was grotesque. Its gray mottled skin resembled crumbling concrete, and its stringy hair clung wetly to its face. It sat hunched, knees pressed to its chest, head tilted at an unnatural angle. Michael's breath hitched. The child lifted its head, revealing empty black sockets where eyes should have been. Its mouth stretched into an unnervingly wide grin, rows of jagged, yellow teeth gleaming in the moonlight. Who are you?" Michael stammered, his voice barely a whisper. The child didn't answer. Instead, it giggled, the sound warped and echoing unnaturally through the room. Slowly, it unfolded itself, standing on limbs far too long for its small frame. Panic surged through Michael as he turned to flee, but the door slammed shut behind him. He yanked at the handle, but it wouldn't budge.
"You should not have come here."
Michael spun around, his back pressed to the door. The child was gone, but the room began to transform. The walls rippled like water, grotesque faces emerging from the shadows, their hollow mouths whispering his name. The wooden floor beneath his feet turned cold and damp. He looked down to see dark, viscous water oozing up through the cracks, pooling around his shoes. Desperation gripped him. He pounded on the door. "Let me out!" A laugh echoed once more, this time closer. When he turned, the child was standing inches from him. Its grin split its face wide open, revealing rows upon rows of serrated teeth.
You belong to me now.
The air grew colder still as the child lunged. Michael's scream was cut short as darkness engulfed him. The next morning, Michael's neighbors grew concerned when they noticed the front door hanging open. They called the police. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. The floors were soaked with blackened water, and a chill lingered in the air. Upstairs, in the guest room, the officers found only a single message scrawled across the wall in dark, dripping letters. "He's mine now." 3 days had passed since Michael's disappearance, but the house was not empty. Something moved within its walls, watching, whispering, laughing with a distorted child's voice. Detective Evan Crawford arrived at the address on the morning of the 4th day. He was a man who didn't believe in superstitions. Yet, an unexplainable unease settled in his chest as he stood before the house. The front door was still open, swaying gently with the wind. Evan pushed the door open cautiously, and as he crossed the threshold, a wave of icy air washed over him like a frozen mist. Inside, the floors were still damp, the walls thick with the scent of mold. He raised his flashlight, casting its beam along the walls. Wet footprints trailed across the wooden floor, but they didn't lead outside. Instead, they twisted and circled, as if Michael had wandered aimlessly before vanishing. Slowly, Evan ascended the staircase, each step creaking beneath his weight. He halted before the guest room, the room where the message had been found. The door was slightly ajar, exactly as it had been before. He exhaled deeply, then pushed the door open. The room was empty. Almost. On the far wall, where the previous message had been scrawled, new words had appeared, written in the same dark, wet substance that had yet to dry. "You were next." Evan's blood ran cold. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind him, and his flashlight flickered out, plunging the room into darkness. Then, from the farthest corner, a soft giggle echoed, a child's laugh. Evan remained frozen, his breath unsteady in the darkness. He was a seasoned officer, yet he had never felt fear like this before. A raw, primal terror that crawled under his skin like tiny insects. He shook his flashlight, and after flickering for a moment, it sputtered back to life. As the beam illuminated the room again, the child was there, sitting in the same corner, but this time he wasn't alone. Beside him, another figure knelt on the floor, its body stiff, its skin gray and crumbling like eroded stone. Its eyes were hollow, dark voids, and its mouth was stretched into the same grotesque grin. "Michael?" A cold shiver crept down Evan's spine, but he didn't back away. With a trembling hand, he raised his gun. "Michael?" No response, no movement. But the child moved. Slowly, it lifted its head and giggled. A distorted, static sound, as if broadcast from a broken signal. Then, without warning, it lunged forward, crawling toward him at an unnatural speed, its elongated limbs twisting in ways they shouldn't. Evan fired. Once, twice, but the child didn't stop. The flashlight flickered and died again, plunging the room into absolute darkness. Then the world changed. Evan was no longer in the room, no longer in the house. He was somewhere else, a cold, lightless expanse. The air was heavy, thick with murmurs and distant voices. as if 1,000 whispers were chanting his name at once. Slowly he turned behind him, stood Michael, expressionless, lifeless. Something crawled against Evan's skin, cold fingers, slender and reaching from the void. He tried to move, but he was trapped. Then, just as he realized there was no escape, the gray child whispered in his ear,
"You belong to me now."
And in the real world, the house was silent once more. 3 days later, the police found Evan's car parked outside, its engine still warm, but there was no sign of him. Only the walls of the guest room bore a new message, scrawled in the same jagged script. "One more, but we want more." After Detective Evan's disappearance, the police decided to seal off the house permanently. But that didn't stop the curious from approaching. Stories were told of eerie laughter, shifting shadows, and whispers calling out names no one recognized. But in the end, even stories fade. Years passed, and the house remained abandoned until the authorities decided to demolish it. On a cold morning, bulldozers lined up before the old structure, surrounded by workers and supervisors. When they began digging, they didn't just find the foundations. They found a room that wasn't on any blueprint. A small windowless chamber, its walls damp and made of old stone. In the center sat an aged wooden chair, and on it rested a withered body, its skin gray and crumbling, its eye sockets empty voids. Michael's body. But that wasn't the end. As one of the workers moved closer to examine it, the corpse's mouth slowly creaked open, despite its lips having long since stiffened. And in a hollow, layered voice, filled with echoes from beyond this world, it whispered,
"You freed us."
At that moment, the ground trembled beneath their feet, as if something was trying to rise. By evening, there was no trace of the house. There was nothing at all, as if it had never existed. But on quiet nights, in the empty space where it once stood, some passers-by swore they could still hear it. If you enjoyed the story and love the atmosphere of mystery and horror, don't forget to support us by liking the video and subscribing to the channel so you don't miss any new content. Turn on the notification bell to stay updated. There are still many secrets to uncover. Now, tell me in the comments, what do you think of this story, and do you have a theory about what happened? Stay tuned for more, because the next story might be darker than you imagine.